Howdy and welcome. We are at the end of the drill season, and we thought it would be fitting while we wait to get our long form podcast wrapped up that we would give you an episode of Quick Commutes, the short form drill team dynamics podcast, where we talk briefly about a subject that might be interesting to you, whether you are an instructor, whether you're a cadet commander, or whether you are someone on a drill team. This time we wanted to talk, because it is the end of the season, for all the groups that are ending their season here this weekend. Wanted to talk a little bit about competition. And the genesis for this whole thing was a conversation that we were having with another coach friend. And of course, with our coaches network, we're constantly sharing ideas and, trying to help each other out and trying to move the activity forward from the pedagogical side, from the educational side. And we were talking about competition and what it was like back in the day. And, he was telling me kind of about what it was like when he was an up-and-coming drill team commander. And it was like, well, if you didn't win the drill meet, there was a pretty good chance that you were getting replaced on Monday morning, as the cadet commander. And, we talked about how, the prevailing narrative at the time really was, we're going to beat so-and-so team. We're going to, these are our rivals and we're going to beat them this time around. And, we have to work hard because we don't want to lose. We want to win. We want to beat these other groups. And, as we're talking, it's going, we're kind of going back and forth about, what competitions are like. And he basically says, listen, I graduated high school as a cadet commander. Spent a couple of semesters in a senior ROTC program in the area. And, what I came to realize was that the people who were our judges for years and years, I was teaching them about drill. And it was kind of an eye-opening experience, I guess, for him to look around and realize we stressed out about these competitions. Sometimes people lost their positions, when they didn't fare well. And the judges that we had, they don't know at all. I'm teaching them. I'm a freshman and I got seniors and I'm teaching them what the right things are and what the wrong things are and so on and so forth. And so it was kind of eye-opening. And so, he asked a question is like, well, how do you guys talk about competition in a way that's healthy then? How do you frame this in a way that is not about beating up on another team? How do you make it make sense that the judges may or may not know, what it is that they're looking at? They may be trying their best, but they're not experts by any means, in most cases. And we got to talking, and this is probably the conversation that I think more drill teams should have. This is certainly the conversation that we have with the groups that we work with, and whether it's in a closer capacity, a relationship built over many years, or whether we're just going out to see a group, once before the end of the season. We really try to set this up the right way because competition can be a very, very toxic thing, and I think we all know that. All the more problematic in drill team is that we kind of take this sports mentality into it, but there is no offense in drill. No one's got the superior defense, and that's the reason they're going to overtake that other team, on the field of play on Saturday. And so when we try to apply this hyper competition-centric worldview on what is essentially a performing art, at the end of the day, we're all making art. It's an art to be able to go out and perform a regulation sequence that is just this incredible replication of the spirit, intent, and words of the drill manual. Like, that's artistic, right? It takes a little bit of vision, a little bit of creativity. It takes a lot of literacy, to be able to read that manual. And of course, obviously with exhibition, we're most certainly making art. And then it's kind of in the judge's hands to decide whose art is better than whose, right? So the conversation, and whether you're an instructor or a cadet commander, or whether you're just on the drill team, and these are the kinds of things that we should be talking about, that, that conversation is really about, we don't talk about winning as being a goal that validates our work during the season. And the reason is really very simple. I mean, first and foremost, the example of our friend with going to his senior ROTC program and realizing that the judges were just doing their best. I think if there was a situation where you could guarantee that every weekend you went out to a competition, you were performing for a panel of, no kidding, actual expert individuals that understood not only drill and ceremonies, but understood the nature of the activity, and so on and so forth. And I think you can make an argument that, like, hey, we could put a little bit more stock in the numbers that we're getting or the placements that we're receiving. But the fact of the matter is, right now, we are mostly reliant on very well-meaning volunteers, and therefore we can't put a lot of stock in, the feedback that we get, because as well-meaning as they may be, they just might not have the breadth of experience to be able to accurately rank and rate the teams, right? The other thing that's really the core of why we don't talk about winning and losing goes to this whole thing about beating other teams. And I think that we have seen so many times, in our years of involvement, over a decade corporately now, and then obviously many years before that, the groups who focus their season on beating another group, maybe it's their crosstown rival, maybe it's the group that's always, in a close, cluster with them placement-wise at these meets. Inevitably, if you put your nose to the grindstone and you work really, really hard, even if that's your motivation, right? Eventually it could happen. And in 100% of cases where we've seen groups, angling at their rivals rather than looking at something else, maybe a little bit, with more substance, we see that they get to that goal. They beat, quote unquote, that competitor at a meet. And then they look around, like climbing the mountain and realizing on the other side of the mountain, there's really not anything else. You just climb more mountains. And at that point, the motivation tends to wane. The apathy tends to set in. And it becomes this really hard battle to get out of this rut, because you've created this artificial situation for yourself where the entire goal was, we're going to beat so-and-so, we're going to beat so-and-so, we're going to beat so-and-so. And then the entire process kind of becomes about that. The entire reason we work hard is to beat another team. And going back to the whole, we don't necessarily have experts in front of us every weekend thing, there's nothing saying that was even really the validation that we were looking for. And so, with the groups that we teach, we really don't talk at all about the winning being part of the success story of the season, right? I heard a quote once from a well-known instructor in another activity, basically to summarize, says, listen, if you make the whole thing about winning and losing, and you put all this work and hard effort in towards the goal, and then you don't win, it just kind of makes the process sort of a waste, right? Kind of makes the whole thing a little bit of a negative experience. And we want to make sure that the teams that we teach really understand that the reward of the season is the process, right? The reward of the season is the ability to look at something and critically think and break it down and achieve it at a high level, whether it's the drill or whether it's within the team dynamics or whether it's with regard to the logistics of running the team, right? And so we tend to talk a lot about the process, and we tend to talk a lot about what it looks like to be the best, not in relation to other people, but what does the best look like for the team, that we have right now? What does it look like to become better at whatever it is that we're putting our focus on? And I think in doing that, it really highlights the process more than the outcome. And when you do win, and we talk about this all the time, it's like, it's nice to feel validated. It's nice to have your hard work recognized, and we should treat every, time that we go out and we are competitively successful, we should treat that as a blessing that we enjoy. But we should also understand that's not the reason why we're showing up every day. I think, the challenging thing about competition, and this especially goes for the adults, the instructors and coaches listening to this, the challenging thing about competition is that it's not a bad thing. It is a good thing for the students, for the performers. It creates this situation where there's urgency, where there's accountability. You know that you're going to be standing in front of a public audience and you're going to be performing. And it's not going to be that we're just showcasing it. It's going to be, that it means something, that someone's going to be evaluating what it is that we're performing. And so it creates this amazing situation where you want to work urgently and you want to prepare at the highest level, and I think that part of it is outstanding. That's the good thing about competition. But we just have to be really careful, I think, as leaders. The students that we teach, groups that we work with, they're going to learn to see competition through the lens that's held up to them by the adults who are responsible for them, right? And certainly in their young adult lives, for many of them, this will be the lens that they use to see all competition, especially going into their early adult life before they kind of figure out, what their unique perspective or viewpoint or whatever it is, they're going to look at things through the lens that you hold up. And we have seen so many times where taking the easy path out, oh, so and so was talking smack about you. I was just over with their instructors, and they say that they can beat you, and I told them, it ain't gonna happen. And it's like, you guys just went to a professional development meeting and had Whataburger after. That wasn't even something that was said, right? With that kind of low hanging fruit of they say they're gonna beat you, you got to beat them. These are well meaning motivation tactics, but it accidentally holds that lens up that says, hey, listen, this is how we're going to view all forms of competition. And we have to be careful about that, right? We have to make sure that the lens that we hold up is healthy. So, the first piece of the puzzle that we talked about, and that I think is really important that we put out there, is we don't talk about winning as being that validation that tells us we did a good job. We know if we did a good job, no matter how much your judges know, as much or more in most cases, right? From your perspective, whether what you did was a success or not, right? And so we have to continue to come back to what is the process, and are we being as good as we possibly can, at everything that we're doing. That's when we know that we're going to be successful. And if someone validates that, well, that's awesome. We appreciate that. And if it doesn't go our way, then we look at ourselves and say, did we do the best that we knew how to do, in the time frame that we had to do it? And if the answer is yes, then that's a lesson right there by itself, right? And so, I think it takes this emphasis off of winning and losing in a healthy way. And it puts it into the proper context, which is the reason that there's urgency is because there's a deadline, and the reason that there is hard work is because there's going to be an audience, right? It's not like we're just doing this for ourselves and no one's ever going to see what it looks like. No, we're going to step out in front of people. And so we wanted to be prepared at a high level. Then he brought up something interesting in this conversation that we were having, and he basically said, listen, obviously junior ROTC, and we all know this, junior ROTC attracts folks who have not yet been pulled in a different direction. If you were a sports person, that's where you are. If you're a arts person, theater or dance or, what have you, that's where you will find yourself, because those activities are accessible far before JRTC or drill team is accessible, right? So for a lot of the students that come onto a JRTC drill team, winning a competition might be the first time they feel that really strong validation, that sense that their hard work was rewarded with a tangible thing. They, somebody handed them a trophy or put a medal around their neck and said, you're in first place. And he's like, I had some students that for the very first time, they did really well at a competition. And they were like, wow, this feels incredible. I want everyone on our team to feel this. So what do you do about that scenario? And in that moment, we've been preaching the same things for a long, long time, right? And in that moment, it kind of reframed a lot of I guess the reason that we teach the things that we teach. And basically my response was, listen, if you go to the drill meet and you believe that the entire purpose of going to that meet was to fall in at the edge of the drill floor and perform your routine, get a score, go to the award ceremony, and go home, then yes, that validation would feel fantastic. And it's probably the only time you would feel that validation is because you viewed the meet as a functional thing, and rightfully so. I think this is not the natural, thing to think about what we're going to go into here. The natural thing is, well, the point of the drill meet is to compete with the drill, and therefore I feel validation when I do well, and place well based on the merits of my performance. Well, for decades now, the top level drill teams have really dialed in what it means to go to a drill competition, right? And we learned this firsthand by being on these teams, by witnessing these teams, by teaching these teams, that when you get to the highest level, everything is performance. Getting off the bus when you show up to the meet is a performance. And are we the best at getting off the bus, right? Not best in relation to the other teams there. Maybe that will be the case incidentally, right? But are we as organized and as decisive and as non-confused looking as we possibly can be? Unloading the gear and bringing it to the staging or ready area, that's a performance. Going to the bathroom to brush your teeth before you suit up for inspection, that's a performance. Holding a door open for someone and wishing them good luck and smiling and being genuine, that's a performance. In other words, not that we're not genuine about it, but that we're doing it intentionally to model what great sportsmanship and great behavior looks like in a drill meeting. Are we the best at honoring the other groups and treating them well? And all those things, whether it's a small thing, whether it's a big thing, even if you go to a drill meet and you're doing a practice or a warm-up, are you really practicing? At the top level, not really. It's kind of this dog and pony show where you're performing what a practice looks like, while incidentally, you're getting dialed in and locked in to the environment that you're about to compete in. What does the floor feel like? What do the lights look like? Maybe, getting the jitters out of being in front of people. It's a practice, but it's a performance of a practice. And, the thing that you hear about when teams start to adopt this viewpoint of like, if you do it more than once, you should choreograph it. What you start to realize is that you start getting validation constantly. When you leave the hotel and you've been the best at being polite to the staff there and down to the point of everyone is stripping the beds and putting the towels in the same way so that the housekeeping has an easy job, walk in and do their thing. When the hotel staff comes up to that instructor or the cadets and says, listen, you're the best group of young people that we've ever had here. You were so polite. You were so thoughtful. You left our rooms in such a great state. We can't wait to have you back. That is validation, right? You feel that rush of like, oh, we did a great job and somebody noticed. When you're going into the drill meet and people are moving out of the way and they're stopping and they're talking in whispers, how sharp is this? That's validation. You're receiving that same validation, and it's happening constantly. When somebody comes up and says, hey, your hair looks amazing. Can I take a picture of that? And can you tell me how you got it to look like that? And you say, absolutely. Here, let me show you. We did this, and this. Oh, thank you so much. This is so helpful. This is really going to help. Like, that's validation. When you're walking down, to go to a competition event and you're in game mode and somebody says, hey, good luck. And you look at them in the eye and you smile and you say, thank you so much. And they're like, wow, that's a really cool drill team. Like that's a really nice group. That's validation. And so I think if the only time you receive the validation is at the award ceremony, I think, that could become a very addicting feeling to chase. And therefore you would put competition at the forefront because you realize if you just score the most numbers in the numbers game, you will get that validation and you'll get that rush at the end. Well, if we're thinking about everything as a performance, then that validation will happen regardless of how we place. That validation is going to happen. And you know what? In a way, it also makes sure that if we don't come out on top, that's okay. Because if we're doing all these things and we're getting recognized, that's still about the process. And it's still about, yes, we're doing a good job. And no one can give us a lower score and say, well, you're not doing a good job. It's like, well, no, everyone at this meet recognized our sportsmanship and our conduct. And they recognized, how organized things were and all the restaurant and hotel staff along the way on this overnight trip or whatever, they all recognized that we were doing a great job. Like, that's the validation that will sustain you and that will make it worth it when you maybe don't get the placement that you want or that you would hope for, right? Because I think everyone feels good when they do well and everyone feels maybe not so great when they don't do well. But if we can find ways to seek out and create the opportunities to quote unquote win at every turn, that's going to be where we can get that sense of fulfillment. And it really is more all encompassing because it's not just about how good you were at a thing one time. It's about how well you planned and executed your mission. And I think that goes more to the process. It's a much, much more healthier way to look at that. And it's really, for the teams that embrace this, it really becomes something that they enjoy doing. And they learn how to present themselves in public in any number of situations, how much thought should go into it and how much attention to detail they should have. Because, that is the situation they're placing themselves in when they go to the drill meet. Every moment from 4:30 in the morning until, 6 at night with the awards, the entire thing was the performance. It wasn't the 10 minutes on the drill floor or the 8 minutes on the drill floor that was really the performance that they were trying to give. And I think this led us to kind of the last piece of the puzzle. We talked about, we don't talk about winning as being the validating factor. We don't talk about beating other teams. It's not part of the conversation. We're not interested in hearing it when it comes up. We're very quick to shut that down. The last piece of the puzzle, right? The thing that we need to be constantly thinking about when it comes to competition I think we use the metaphor all the time. It's like, imagine you're in Las Vegas at a casino and you're sitting down at a table. Your job is not to beat the players at the table. That's what the casual people are there for, right? Your job is to beat the house and to walk out with as much as you possibly can, right? And so when we talk about competition, because I think a lot of people here, I mean, we just put out a 30-minute video on proportional scoring. How do you understand and exploit proportional scoring to your advantage? We talk about competitive strategy in every single one of these events. Why would you pick such and such cadets to staff this particular team? And I think that might lead people to believe that we're extremely competitive. And in a way we are, but it's not in terms of the other teams at the drill meet and trying to beat the other teams and come out in first place. It's trying to understand the meet and the event at a level where we can look at it and dissect it and, see the ones and zeros in binary code like the Matrix and understand what we can do to set ourselves up to have the best chance. And it's thrilling and it's exciting. Not when we win because we beat everyone and we got first place. It's thrilling and exciting when you can strategize about something and have that strategy pay off. When you can see that, hey, we looked at the data and the numbers and we crunched the numbers and we trusted our process. And then, we saw the thing. It's like a science experiment. We had a hypothesis and we tested the hypothesis and we had our control group and we had the outcome of the experiment. Then the outcome of the experiment validated what we believed was going to be the case going in, and we were able to test that. And so we talk a lot about beating the meet, winning the meet, and we win the meet. Not only do we win the meet when the team, that you're on is the most talked about and the most endearing and yet one of the most fiercely athletic and strong on the drill floor. Yes, that's the case. But we also, quote unquote, win the meet when we have a strategy that pays off and we have a hypothesis that's confirmed in the output, right? And so we try to really contextualize that. It's like, hey, and then we just tell the groups, it's like, you're not going down there to try to beat the other teams. You're going down there to test whether your strategy will produce the outcome you think it's going to produce in this particular setting, in this particular metagame, in this particular competition, right? So that's probably the last big piece of the puzzle is like, yes, we're strategic and we're teaching teams strategy, right? But at the end of the day, we're always putting that in the context of like, this is how you can look at a problem and come up with that hypothesis and test it and see if your strategic thinking and your critical thinking and your planning ability and your way of thinking about this is an excellent opportunity for young people to learn about that process. And so when you put it in that frame of reference, right, it really is more about the experience of being at the competition than it is about whether we win or lose the competition, right? So to kind of wrap this up, these are the things that we should be talking more with our teams about. We should be contextualizing competition the right way and in a healthy way. Competition creates the urgent scenario, the accountability of having to go out and perform for someone else. But there are certainly better ways to frame it than we're going to try to make the point of our season to win, or we're going to try to make the point of our season to beat so-and-so. If we could just beat them, that would be a good season, right? We have to find a way to make the thing worth it. And we have to find a way to make it worth it in a world where we can't necessarily trust that, as well-meaning as our judges are, that they know the activity well enough to give us that accurate score that can really validate our performance itself. We got to go beyond that. We got to think about, the big picture of can we be the best at every single thing that we can do? And if we do it more than once, can we plan and execute, in a way that turns heads and causes people to notice what it is that we're doing in a positive way. And I think if we do that, and every team were to do that, then we can sit at the award ceremony, and when it doesn't go the way that we maybe want it to go, we can celebrate and honor the team on the top, right? We can celebrate the teams that do well. And ultimately, we're not so preoccupied with our own success or failure that we fail to be able to do that for the other groups, right? Part of winning the meet, part of beating the meet is being the team that is genuinely excited when another team does well, right? We want every team to perform at their highest and do the best they can, because that way when that team walks up on stage, whether it's our team or whether it's a different team, we know that everyone brought their A game and we're celebrating the fact that, hey, today, The judges may have seen it this way, right? On the flip side, and we talk about this very, very, very clearly, right? This is how you take a placement that you're not happy with and turn that around. This is how you use that moment to honor the group that wound up in that position. But also, if you do find yourself in a quote unquote winning position, if you do find yourself in a top placement, how do you handle that, right? Because how you handle that is going to filter into the rest of your life. You're allowed to be happy, right? We're not saying that you shouldn't be happy with winning a competition. You're allowed to be happy. But what we would want to make sure of is like, how do we perform that happiness, right? What does it look like to somebody that's not us? Do they see us screaming our heads off and running around and, crying and frothing at the mouth and falling over? Or do they see what it looks like to be successful, to be happy about it, to be free to express that emotion, but to do it in a tactful and respectful way that doesn't detract from everyone else's experience, right? And then if that is the case and we are in that successful placement, how do we respond to other people when they come up and say, hey, congratulations, great job? Are we teaching our students to look someone in the eye and say, thank you so much, that means a lot, right? Are we teaching our students to line up and applaud everybody, that's a top finisher, even though we finished in the place, at the very, very top? Are we teaching our students to still honor the work of everyone else at that meet and not get so wrapped and focused in on themselves that they believe now that because we've won, we're the only thing that matters in the whole world? Is like, we have to have those conversations, because the reality is, at the end of the day, there's going to be a winner and there's going to be not winners. Not everyone is going to win. Kirsten ran the numbers on the Nationals in Daytona, and it's something crazy, like less than 1% of schools that have ever attended will ever win, right? And so it's important, and that's probably true of anything, right? Professional sports, collegiate stuff, not everyone is going to be in that top position. And if that's the case, then we can't make our seasons revolve around winning and losing. If not everyone is going to wind up in the placement, if there's 20 teams, the whole saying is that 19 of them wish they would have placed better, right? And so it's like, what do we do to make sure that the conversation about competition is healthy? Because the worst thing in the world, and again, we've said this before in other podcasts, the long form ones, the worst thing in the world would be to think that the point was to win the drill meet. And then when you don't win the drill meet, the last 4 years of your life that you could have spent doing anything, but you chose to spend it on the drill team. Or if you're an instructor or coach, you entice those cadets to spend it on the drill team. And if at the end of 4 years, right, it was all a waste because we thought that the goal was to win and we didn't win, wouldn't that be just a disgusting waste of someone's time? Wouldn't that be something that the whole process becomes this negative thought in their brains as they graduate and go out into the world? And we've seen it. And we've hired people and we have worked with young adults who had maybe a less than healthy lens held up to their eyes when it comes to competition. And they carry that with them after graduation. It might not be, if you're a coach, if you're an instructor, this thing might not be that big of a deal to you. You have a whole program to run. You have years and years of cadets before and to come to think about, right? But for those cadets, if we don't frame this right, they may carry that well into their adult lives, and we have to be mindful of it. So think about the conversations you're having about competition. Think about how you're framing it for your team, and have the open and honest conversations about, guys, let's think about it this way maybe. Have we considered thinking about it from this angle? Those things are going to help move this activity forward. We appreciate every single part of this activity, whether you're an instructor and you're working with your teams. You play a huge role if you're a coach listening to this. We need more good, healthy adult role models who are knowledgeable about the activity, obviously to help push it in this positive direction. And if you're on a drill team, whether you're a commander or you are just a cadet on the team, right? This is your experience. This is all of our experience. We need to work to make it as positive as possible. So hopefully this gives you an idea of how to frame those conversations about competition. We will be back with a full long-form podcast as soon as the season wraps up. So look for that. We really weren't sure whether anyone was paying attention to these or whether anyone cared what we had to say. or that, thought it was helpful. We got some really great feedback, so we're working on it. We're going to make sure that we have more to come. We're really excited to continue this conversation about this amazing activity so that we can continue to move it forward in the right direction. We always say it, we want to make drill team not suck. Well, this is one of the ways that we can do that. Let's reframe how we talk about competition. Let's make it healthy. And until next time, we will talk to you later.